With Todd McFarlane's announcement of an expanded Spawn universe, let's take a look back before we take a look forward. Stay tuned for the video. Hey YouTube, it's Matt here. Hey, welcome to another video. We are going to talk about the expanded Spawn universe happening in the future. But before we can talk about the future, I want to go back to the past. Now, Todd McFarlane is talking about some new, although I said I'm going to the past, now I'm going to talk about the future for a little bit, then we'll go to the past. So, Todd McFarlane is talking about dropping 4 new series, or at least 3 series in a one-shot, into the Spawn universe. He's going to be releasing a one-shot called the Spawn Universe. And then he's going to be dropping 3 more ongoing series starting in 2021. The first one he's going to be dropping is going to be King Spawn. Then the second one is going to be the Gunslinger. Now, right now it's known as Spawn the Gunslinger. But Todd McFarlane has stated that he wants to drop the name Spawn and just call the character the Gunslinger because he wants this character to be his own entity that's not really associated with Spawn, just part of the expanded Spawn universe. And then he's going to be dropping 1 more series in December of 2021, and that's going to be called The Scorched. Now, all of this excitement in the Spawn universe makes me want to go back to 1992, whenever Todd McFarlane, with some other great creators, created Image Comics, okay? There was a handful of them. They left Marvel Comics. They opened up their brand new comic company, and one of the first titles out of that new Image Comics was Spawn. This Spawn was a creation of Todd McFarlane. He was the artist and the writer in the beginning of the series. Now, in fact, right here is the cover of, a copy of the first Spawn magazine. This is Spawn comic book. This was one of the highest selling books of all time. That's how popular Spawn was at the beginning. And Todd McFarlane had wanted to create a larger Spawn universe. And not only in comic books, in toy lines also, and in cinematic movies. And we're going to talk about some of those movies, but first, that movie. But first, let's start talking about some of these titles that Todd McFarlane had put out with the Spawn line back in the 90s. Now, this was an ongoing series. This was called Curse of Spawn. It was a fun little series here. Here's another one, Spawn the Dark Ages. Another expanded line in Spawn universe. And here was a different ongoing title, Spawn the Undead. Now, I have full runs of all of those titles. And there is another Spawn book that came out. It was in the late 90s and it ran into 2003. Now it was Sam and Twitch. They were detectives in the Spawn comic books. They were pretty popular, so much so that they gathered their own comic line. Now, I would love to show you one of those comic books, but very early on, I had somebody want to borrow those comic books because they wanted to read Sam and Twitch. I gave them all 26 issues to read, but I gave it to them with the impression that I was going to get it back. The only problem is I forgot who I lent them to, and I have never got them back. They never decided to give them back to me. So I am now missing my 26 issues of Sam and Twitch, and I'm going to have to get them because I like to have full runs, and I like to have pretty much every issue in a character's line. So we're going to have to go back and get Sam and Twitch sometime. But it's not a big deal. They're going to be relatively affordable. But there are also numerous one-shots that Todd McFarlane came out with of Spawn in the 90s. Here's Spawn the Godslayer, Spawn Resurrection. Now all of these are very epic titles with that are dark, like Curse of Spawn, Medieval Spawn, Spawn the Undead, Spawn Resurrection, and there's a lot of titles that have blood in them, okay? Honestly, that's kind of the appeal to the Spawn character. Spawn Simony, right here. Now, there's also religious themes in it. Spawn, Blood and Shadows. Spawn, Blood and Salvation. They love the term blood. Here was a 4-issue miniseries, Spawn, Blood Feud. It kind of makes you chuckle that, yeah, they were clearly going for a theme. Now, here is Spawn. This is a fan edition. There were 3 in this little run there. And there is Spawn the Impaler. Now, of all the Spawn titles and names, Spawn the Impaler has to be one of my favorite ones. And I think of Vlad the Impaler, you know, Vlad Dracula, the guy who Bram Stoker designed the character Dracula after. So I think he has nothing on Spawn the Impaler. So there was also a collaboration between a great artist and writer, Jim Lee, his famous Wildcats characters, and also Spawn. So Spawn and Wildcats. Spawn and Batman. I am going to be honest with you, and I've read reviews about this, and the reviews were pretty much what I thought. 2 really exciting characters, Spawn and Batman, and how could you get any better? My goodness, are these going to be a great episode, great issue. Yeah, it was a very boring read. Oh, it was horrible. Like, you thought it was going to be good? Not so much. All right. Now, we're going to talk a little bit later about the Spawn movie, but there was a Spawn movie that came out in 1997. This was before Blade. This was before X-Men or Spider-Man. And our superhero movies weren't that great, you know, with graphics at this point. I really wanted to like this movie. I thought it was okay at best, but because there weren't that many comic book movies, I liked it a lot more at the time. It's kind of a cult classic now, and I don't totally dislike the movie, but time has not done that movie well, let's be honest. Now, here's another Spawn, the movie, and this is more of a graphic novel length comic book. And this was a series that came out with some of the Todd McFarlane's toys. This is Todd Toys, and there's just different issues of Spawn, and they're all numbered number 1, even though they are different issues. Here's a Violator. Yep. Different issues of Todd McFarlane's Spawn. Now, this brings us up to modern day. I did a video a few months ago, back in October of 2000, and it was titled Low Print Runs of Spawn Comic Books. We talked about some of the super low print runs that it had gained. Spawn at one point was down to less than 11,000 print run of this title. Most comic titles would have been canceled if they had gotten numbers that low, but Spawn kept chugging along. Well, thankfully it did, because since issue 300, Spawn has absolutely skyrocketed back to the top of the comic universe. It is now one of the top-selling titles in comics month after month, and they just released Spawn 316, so we're talking, you know, a significant time, longer than a year. Spawn has been near the top, and I'm not saying the exact highest-grossing book every month, but it's in that small number category. So there's a resurgence in the interest of Spawn. And that's what makes me think that Todd McFarlane has announced this expanded Spawn universe. Let's hope that it does better than all of these different attempts of creating a larger Spawn universe back in the 1990s and early 2000s. You know, with these titles, there's so much excitement around the Spawn character. Let's hope that the sales continue to rise and rise. And good news, you know, good news brings about more good news. There's also news about the Spawn movie that might happen. It has been nearly a quarter century since the first Spawn movie came out in 1997. And we talked about that movie. It wasn't the greatest movie. It was far from the worst movie ever. But it failed to capture enough success in order to have a sequel, which was always the original intent. So the Spawn movies have pretty much gone dark, and there's always been talk of redoing the movie, doing a reboot, but it has just not happened. But in recent years, in recent months even, there has been a renewed focus. Now, Jamie Foxx has been tied to the role of Al Simmons for quite a few years now. Now, he is tied up in a few different projects. One is, Marvel's, I want to say Marvel, but it's really Sony's Spider-Man movie, even though it's part of the MCU universe. But anyhow, he's tied with the, what we call it, the threequel, if you will, the third Tom Holland Spider-Man, and he is going to be reprising his role of Electro. So Jamie Foxx has star power. Whenever he's tied to something, it gives it a little bit of credence. Now, there is another actor that is tied to this, and that is Jeremy Renner. Now, Jeremy Renner, we know him as he is also the gentleman that plays Hawkeye in the MCU. He wants to play Twitch, which is one of the detectives that I talked about in the comic book series, Sam and Twitch. Now, that is another person that gives this movie a little bit of credence. So you have Todd McFarlane, you have Jamie Foxx, you have Jeremy Renner, all tied into this, and you have some big people willing to back this movie financially. So hopefully this movie can happen. Now, they also have gained a little bit of confidence. Todd McFarlane has always wanted to have an R title on this Spawn movie. He wanted to have it back in '97, but the producers just felt that was too big of a risk back in 1997. But we all know the amazing success that the Deadpool movies have received with, honestly, quite foul language and quite foul graphics in their R-rated movie, Deadpool. So, with that success of Deadpool, Todd McFarlane feels very confident that he will be able to produce a R-rated Spawn movie that will be entertaining. So, hopefully that happens. There was also some glee at seeing the success of the Joker movie that came out in 2019. These are grittier movies that foul language and violence. And honestly, if you ever read the Spawn comic books, they are foul language and they are full of violence. So, hopefully there is a new Spawn movie that comes out. Hopefully it's not too much violence and foul language, but you get my point. Hopefully it is a movie that stays true to what the comic books portray out there. So, that is the news of the Spawn movie, and maybe it will happen. There is some more hope that it will. So, we talked about the expanded Spawn universe in comic books. We talked about the past Spawn universe in the movies. So, Spawn's been around since 1992. That's 29 years. That's a long time in comic book history. Now, it has had success in the past. It had a pretty big doldrum there in the middle, and it is having great success now. Let's hope that the Spawn universe can continue with much success in the future. Hey, if you liked this video, please hit that thumbs up and also hit that subscribe button down below. If you have any comments or questions or just want to kick it up in the comment section, please put something down there. I do respond to almost all of my comments down there. But guys, I want to tell you thank you for watching and have a great day.